This episode is sponsored by Sir Lancelot LLC, also known as SLA Capital, which, if you didn't know, is Dan and I's private lending company. So yes, we are sponsoring our own show, but what you going to do about it? It is our private lending company that offers hard money and DSCR loans to real estate investors of all types. So you can be a new investor, an experienced investor. You can be buying flips. You can be buying rentals, whatever. We can do everything. And not only that, but the rates that we offer are just as competitive, if not cheaper, than pretty much every other company out there. So whatever big company you've been working with, bring us their term sheets and I guarantee you that we can probably beat it. We have the same connections they do. We just don't have all the overhead and middlemen. So if you want to come and check us out, go to slacapital.com/keys and I will know that you came from the show. And by seeing that you came from here, when you get to closing, you will save $500 on your first loan with us. So slacapital.com/keys, we would love to fund your next deal. The problem with this whole system is now they're saying that they're actually revamping how they're going to start doing credit scores.
Let's talk about guns and politics.
Guns and politics. I think that is probably not the brand of show that we want to go towards. There's already plenty of other shows people can listen to that do that.
We can just go to Mike's Instagram. We'll see it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Sorry about that background noise there. You probably heard some sniveling little man at an office over there trying to impersonate me on social media. And no one could hear it because of our great intro song. So...
You want me to restate it?
Nah,
the whole audience.
No, we got a show to do. But welcome to the show today, guys. We have a great friend of the show, Drew Wiard, today, the flying investor. This is your third time on the show.
Yeah,
you've been. And you're one of
offender.
I would call one of my OG real estate friends. I've known you for a long, long time, and I think one of the things that both you and I have stated openly many times is you and me are so different in pretty much every single way, but for some reason we still get along really, really well.
Yeah.
Just basic life principles to how we approach business to everything else. But, there's also a thing that happens where you can be friends with people that have different opinions than you, as shocking as that is to people.
Yeah, there should be more of that going around. I don't understand all the division and all that. Let's just disagree and get along.
Exactly. But dude, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just for people who don't know who you are, give us a quick 30 seconds about where you're at, what you're doing now, and why people should care about having you on the show today.
Yeah, sure. So today I'm, in my mid 40s, but I graduated from pharmacy school years ago, just like Dylan. Did that for, 15 years. Somewhere along the line, I started buying single families, just kind of 1, 2, 3 at a time. And it was never to really set me free or to ditch the job. It was just, I was the sole breadwinner while mom was at home raising kids. And so rocked that for a while until real estate got big enough that I could walk away from the W-2. And it's not that I was rolling in money from it by any means, but it was enough to replace pharmacy. So did single family for a while. My partner and I started buying some commercial buildings. Along the way, we acquired and kind of rolled up 3 different businesses, and that's been an adventure for better or for worse. Yeah. But now today, this whole calendar year of 2025, we've been going hard at commercial real estate and most specifically industrial real estate. And it has been, not only has it gone well, but it's been really gratifying. I feel like I'm kind of falling into my highest and best use or what really gives you purpose and stuff. So that's kind of where we're at.
Nice. That's awesome, dude. And one of the things I always appreciate about how you approach these, you're so incredibly patient and thoughtful with stuff, which I think is a shockingly rare thing in the social media age. And it's funny too, you mentioned the other business. I think the first couple episodes that we had with you, which are probably a year spread apart each, we had one where you talked about just your real estate business. And I think the second one, we almost entirely talked about your business acquisitions that you had done, which I know I've had. I don't know if you've had a conclusion or you've had a change over there, but we can save that for another time. But you have changed course quite a few times over the past few years. And then I'm glad to see that you've found your niche with the commercial stuff. And I know that's going really well for you.
Yeah.
Well, Drew has been indirectly mentioned probably several times on the podcast.
He totally has, honestly. Yeah. Even, maybe not by name, but about stuff that he's doing, because you're such a, I would say a reliable person in the space, right? I know that when you're into getting involved in stuff, it's not a lot of fluff. And when it comes to the commercial space, especially, I feel like there's nothing but bullshit out there.
Yeah, the commercial stuff is tricky, right? Because there's in the single family world, it's relatable. Most everyone lives in a house or knows someone that lives in a house. Like it's super relatable. And so there's a guru for every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And you can make money 100 different ways in single family. And there's 10 gurus in each one of those paths, right? When it comes to commercial, I mean, commercial could be large multifamily or storage or industrial or retail or office or mixed use. And there's just, industrial land. Like there's all sorts of different paths, but there are some of those niches have some pretty major gurus that operate within them. But others are tough. And admittedly, like the industrial niche specifically has been really tough. A couple of years ago when I was trying to figure it out, there are very few books, very few mentors, things like that. So there's a little mystery around it.
So Drew, you've been investing in the commercial space for a while now. As Mike was talking and you were giving your background, it just made me think, it's somewhat similar to the pivots Mike and I have made. Several different businesses, but Mike and I have made a lot of different pivots, and all felt like it was growing towards something. And we've done a lot of different things all at the same time, which I think you've done too. Are you in the spot that you're going to be in for the next 5 years with just going all in on CRE, or are you just seeing a great opportunity within your market and you have the skill set to go on to that? Like, what is next steps or forever steps?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think what we've all seen, at least the four of us have been in the game long enough that we've seen people chase the trends, right? Whatever is trending. And maybe that's buying a business. Maybe that's jumping into whatever asset class is hot. And, for us, I think as we've kind of reassessed, we've got, 10 years of investing in between myself and then my partner's done it for 7 or 8, right? So we can kind of look back and say, which aspects of this do we like and what do we not like? And I think if you're really trying to decide what niche to pursue, you really have to ask, like, what do I want my life to look like? Right. Well, I've done enough flips to know that's not what I want my life to look like. I really enjoyed owning businesses and being in that leadership role and all of that. But it's a lot of work and phone calls and it never leaves your mind and all that. That's not really the life I want to live either indefinitely, so the asset class that we landed on really centers around some very thoughtful introspection and talking about like, what kind of life do we want to live and what kind of money does it take to get there and what sort of asset class is going to allow us to arrive there. Now, the niche that we're in, it's kind of a nice, like the market is treating it well at the moment. But I think we will stick with this asset class regardless of the ups and downs of the market because we're going to buy on fundamentals and it points towards who we want to be and the lives we want to live 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Right.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
But you have to be in the game to kind of learn that, which I think is always the tricky thing. And I think the problem with people that are jumping around to so many things so frequently is you never actually get enough exposure to like to the business as a whole to sort of figure out what niche you want to fall into. Anybody that listened last week, you heard Dan and I's announcement that we basically have stepped away from our home buying business and are shifting heavily towards the lending business, our private lending business, which has been doing very, very well. But the thing is if we were to be making that pivot without having that like A, proof of concept and B, like having gone through the kind of initial stages of that business, it would be kind of dumb for us to make that pivot because we wouldn't know even what the opportunity looks like, what the actual ins and outs are. Because when it comes to something like, private lending or any other business, everything has its downsides and its complexities and its limitations, and the reason that the private lending drew us was because it's the same skill set for us in terms of like a high transaction style of business is like the wholesaling. But the difference is that it allows us to expand our marketplace beyond just like properties that we're involved in. And we can work on properties of people in our circle and different things. And then just from like an institutional level, it just sort of like fit us a little bit better because it's a more established industry with like more professionals, which is what we were craving after 6 years of dealing with crackheads and unreliable buyers and all this other BS that comes with the wholesale side. But we are never going to have the circumstance where we can cash a $60,000 wholesale fee again. Right. That's just not something that happens in the private lending space. And so that's your trade-off is it's the more, I would say, consistent money in exchange for like the big money that you can get on a surprise fund basis on the wholesaling and flipping side.
Yeah.
But so Either way, I think it's a good pivot for you, Drew. I think you'll do very, very well with that.
Yeah. Well,
And then
and likewise for you guys as well. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with wholesaling, right? We've all got good buddies that are just killing. I mean, Dylan's still rocking and rolling, and he's a stone's throw from me, you know. So like, it still works, I think. But there's never anything wrong with taking a season to be introspective and saying like, who am I today that I wasn't 5 years ago? Like, where am I going next and all of that? That's a healthy exercise to go through. And I say that as someone who really got trapped in single family for a long time, because in my market, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And I should have let go of it a while ago, not because there's anything wrong with it. I still own them, and I will for a while. But I didn't allow myself to grow my mindset and scale up to the next thing, you know. So I think taking a pause every now and then and seeing if what you're doing is really still in alignment is really valuable.
Well, to pat Drew on the back one more time, then we can move on. But it's like Drew could buy a house for 15 grand back when he first started, you know, like something like that. Then now we're 200 grand. But my point in saying that is he kept doing it. You kept doing business. You kept reiterating, where other people I know would just have like, oh, this is harder now, and give up. Right. And so you kept iterating, kept learning through the entire decade plus you've been doing this.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's a good transition, Drew, because you've been around for a while. I mean, longer than all of us. Like you said, 10 years in the business, right? So 2025. And like you've seen, I would say, the ups and downs even more extreme in your market, because like Dylan just said, you used to be able to buy a house for 15 grand and now they're so much more expensive. I remember being when we were at one of Ryan Dossey's meetings, I think when we were in Florida, and I can't remember the exact quote that you said but it was along the lines of like, when you knew that we were in a bubble was when your market was appreciating, because your market never appreciated. Right. In Midwest Indiana. And I think that was one of those like long drives, because we all booked that Airbnb that was like an hour away from
far away. Right. Yeah, it was like 21 or 22, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I remember chatting with you and you were that was really interesting. Yeah. And so with that being said, like what's your kind of take on just the general market and what we're kind of expecting here? So I have like a couple of headlines that I pulled up. Some of them are relatively shocking, right? So like, you know, with the foreclosure stuff, there's been a 17% increase in foreclosures this quarter versus last quarter, which is 17% can be a little or a lot. 17% increase.
Okay, from quarter to quarter.
From quarter to quarter, yeah. So it's increasing significantly.
That's fast.
But like also at the same time, 17% of like depending on what that number is, can to be a lot or a little, right? And so there's always like the headlines.
The velocity's there at least.
It's increasing for sure. So you're seeing that. You're also seeing this still like a pretty steady sort of pattern of cash purchases on homes as opposed to people buying things with lenders. Realtor.com had a thing that said 1 in 3 homes, home sales were for all cash over the last, I think it said it's like so far this year, and it was most predominant in like high-end homes and very, very cheap homes. And so like stuff is like still moving, but it's just not like beneficial on the retail homeowner side. And the problem is if you're in the residential business, that's ultimately who your final customer is, regardless of whether you like it or not. Like even if you have rental properties, eventually if you want to sell that asset, it has to be to a retail buyer, more than likely. Even if it's like a duplex or something and interest rates suck, you're not going to be able to find a buyer for it, even if it's a great property, because it doesn't make sense. So like, what's your take though? Like, where do you think things are headed, or like, what's the realistic outcome that we face here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. Admittedly, my focus is a little more on the business side and how businesses are doing and employment and things like that. But we've known for a long time that consumer credit is like at all-time high, and people are tapping into 401ks and savings rates are going down. The wild thing is, though, we've been saying that for 2 or 3 years, and every year it's like, well, this Christmas, America spent more on presents than they ever had. So I can't wrap my head around it. Like at some point, the spending on comfort and subscriptions and entitledness like has to come back and bite us. But, you know, the government keeps printing new money and finding ways to outspend itself. So why can't the people?
Well, one of the things that's pretty interesting about how it's all set up, though, is, you know, we're obviously a debt-based economy, right? Like we have a credit system, and most people's spending power and ability to buy homes, which is typically their logic assets, based on their credit, which has become an increasingly more challenging issue as people are have less money the lower class are less able to build credit. They don't own assets. They can't like get credit lines to build better credit, those sort of things. But that's what like the problem with this whole system is now they're saying that they're actually revamping how they're going to start doing credit scores. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but they're going to start taking into account, like, are you on time with like your utility bills? They're going to require landlords to report rental data, and they're going to put that towards people's credit scores, with basically the thought being it will allow people to get more debt because they will qualify for higher credit. But that's just going to change like the whole kind of narrative around what the debt side of the industry even looks like. You know, if all of a sudden the pool of people becomes that much larger, is it going to be like a supply and demand thing? Are we going to start qualifying people for like larger debt that they shouldn't actually be getting? You know, because there's an argument on both sides of it. It's like such an artificial system. But what happens in every case, like in 2008, as soon as people get into like a hard period, they just change the rules so that like more and more people can now participate. And then ultimately it goes tits up, just like it did with all like the ninja loans and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's not even to mention the FHA stuff that we talked about a couple months ago, that like they're already probably qualifying people with a 60% debt to income that probably shouldn't have qualified in the first place, which didn't include student loan payments which are now like due now or coming due very soon. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that they're changing the rules. But you can only kick the can down for so long. I think all of us, and not just in this room or in this Zoom call, but everyone's like surprised at how long they can kick the can down the road. This has been going on for a decade plus.
If it's when does the shoe drop, and if the shoe drops in 100 years, who cares?
Yeah,
I mean, your kids,
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, that's how a lot of these policies are made. Is it's to solve this problem, like right now during, their time in office or their time as like the chairman. But then once it gets to the next guy, if it's just basically kicking the can.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's not to solve the problem. It's to garner more votes, right, and to garner more favor if you're a politician. And so
people were shocked when Jerome Powell took a second term, like fulfilled a second term, because he's like, they're basically like, man, like you're in a very tough spot. Are you sure you want to be like the guy in charge if this goes belly up? And it must have just been like a pride thing because he still did. But here we are.
Well, one of the things that's kind of funny is, if you think about it from like a super macro level, it's almost like its own form of like socialism, right? Because instead of providing subsidies, it's like the capitalistic form of socialism. Because instead of providing subsidies, what you do is you make it so that more people you can take more people's money because they now qualify for it, right? And so they reduce the barrier to entry to be able to get this money, right? But in order for them to be able to do it, you have to have some kind of like subsidy or change to the larger system for them to even be able to qualify for it. And so it's like, it ultimately just pads the top people's pockets while giving more people opportunities, but at the same time, it will also set up more people for failure.
What's the deal with this? Speaking of that, because I'm not so sure I like have enough information to talk about this idea of like changing the credit score to give people more debt. But like I've been hearing more and more about Affirm, this company that you can basically just buy shit on, like, I don't know, Uber Eats and Amazon, and just pay with Affirm.
It's like Klarna too, right? Isn't it just like a pay now?
Klarna's the other one, yeah.
Yeah, like the pay now or pay later thing.
Yeah,
that seems to be weird, right? Like putting all your personal finances on like a net 30, like, which is, I guess, okay, but like it's not really a good idea.
It's the online version of a payday loan, right? Like they're giving your money right now, and then you just got to go and pay it back with interest later.
Yeah, I think the scarier thing is that you can kind of do it with everything, right? Like people aren't buying TVs at Kmart anymore. They're buying a burger for $30 on Uber Eats because they don't want to go pick it up.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's scary, that bubble a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was Prime Day last year, which usually comes around like November. Was it Prime Day? Maybe it was Black Friday. But it was like 30% of transactions had used like a buy now, pay later payment system.
Really?
Is there any information on what age of the population is doing that? Because I would assume it's the younger generation.
Mostly younger people.
Yeah.
Because also too, like there's a trend with them not having credit cards. They'll use like the buy now, pay later kind of things, which is also silly because they don't build any credit, which is necessary for our society.
And they don't get any of those miles, man.
I know. they're like, God damn, I gotta sell feet pics to fly first class. Is like, no, you just got to get a Delta Platinum card, bro.
Just get a Delta. and
yeah, exactly.
They don't qualify for the Delta Platinum card. They got rejected.
Yeah, we don't get it. You had too much Klarna. Yeah, right.
Is that an STD, Klarna? Is that what that is, Dylan?
So one, why are you asking me?
Yeah, right.
Only friend I know.
I think that's the name of the new like chemical you're supposed to take instead of vaccines that RFK is really into. Give yourself just a little.
We were
going to
talk about politics, and then you give Mike the fucking inch.
I know, right?
Dude, I just gotta take jabs. You know, the fact that now South Park is no longer just like creating parody, they're just like copying real life. That's a problem. South Park used to be the show where like, I mean, the first episode was about a giant anal probe coming out of Eric Cartman's ass, right? And like, it's been the king of absurdity forever, but now they're like out of ideas and they just copy what's actually happening because it's just so insane.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Along the whole, like as a 50,000 foot view for the debt and economic stuff, there's something called the Cantillon effect that people can look up if they want, but it basically talks about this K-shaped economy that we're referring to, where the wealth basically keep on getting wealthier and the poor people get poorer based on the credit systems that are already in place. And this has a natural, like a limitation. It's just further than anyone thinks it is. Yeah. And that kind of intertwines with Ray Dalio's popular for the long-term debt cycle theory. And these usually come to head at like the same times.
Yeah.
And so no one can say like this is what it's going to be from this point forward, but it doesn't matter what economic thought you follow. It's like we have too much debt. The only way out of it is to inflate away the dollar, and to inflate away the dollar, the debasement trade is to own hard assets or a business that prints money. Yeah. Like, and that's like how I'm approaching this decade of my investing life.
Yeah,
and so
I appreciate what you said there too, Dylan, about approaching from the decade, because I also think that so many people, they think about these topics and think about it over a lifetime, or they think about it in the very immediate, which I think both are incorrect. Yeah, right. I think you need to be looking at things over like 5 to 10 year life cycles, because that's realistically when drastic changes will happen.
Yeah. Investable time horizons should be 5 to 10 years, correct. Not 2 decades, in my opinion.
Yeah. It definitely feels too like, and you said something like that similar like a while ago that kind of stuck with me, Dylan. It's like this cycle, like you got to accumulate assets. Like that's the only way you're going to get ahead. And I think all 4 of us sitting here today have that somewhat mantra and have for the last decade. But it's like, if you have assets, no matter what they are, like just buy them. Like don't sit on cash necessarily unless it's strategic. But also like make sure you can build a business that kicks off cash flow so you can acquire more assets, unless you have a good path to getting massively discounted assets. Like,
which is harder for that lower tier that we sometimes talk about, that, you know, the younger generation. But I don't know. I know there's environmental differences for everyone, but like I didn't come from a family with money, and I figured it out. Now I feel like there's still that chance that you can still figure it out.
Well, there's I don't know what it is on the large level of making large income, but I do know from like the base level of making income, it's way easier today than when I was first trying to get a job. When I was, 16, 17, 18, the ability to make money doing different gigs and things like that is vastly easier. The thing that I find, this is probably just me being an old man, is that the teenage to like, and I have like 14 college tenants right now, like the teenage to like, I would say 21-year-old, you can't give them money to do anything. They're like, I'm good. My nephews, my nephew's friends, kids in my neighborhood, very few of them, and it's not that all of them are this way.
Why are you bribing all of these children in your neighborhood?
Cut my lawn. I'll pay you $50. Now I'm good.
Right. But it's like the last few years, and I know you guys have heard me talk about this, but it's like it's a struggle to be like, hey, I will give you $50 to rake these pine needles right here in this small circle, and they're like, I'm good, and they just go back to doing whatever they do, which is not anything more productive than making money.
Well, to your point, Dan, like I think in today's economy, gig economy, investing, like whatever you do, like your point that I think you were making is it's easier to make money today because there's so many different paths to get there. I would agree with that, but that also has to be met with someone that has drive, right? Yeah. And I think the people who are driven, like Dylan was saying, he figured it out. No one showed him the path, but he figured it out. But he's a smart guy. He's driven, better himself, all that kind of stuff, right? I think, those kids coming up, they're going to figure it out. Whereas those who don't have drive, maybe the opposite is true, where there is less opportunity to fall ass backwards into a living.
Yeah.
And I don't, there's no extra political commentary on that. I'm just saying, I think there's amazing opportunity, but you got to show up.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity. It's almost too much. And then I'll also say is the folks that don't have drive may also just not have direction and the direction to go and drive. Like you grow up in certain circumstances and you don't have a certain vision given to you. So it's harder for you to find that path. I do believe that. There's some of that, but you can make a lot of, I know for sure you can make a lot of little money, but just stepping in as a 20-year-old traveling salesman, like all these baby boomers did, where you're going to make $100,000 a year, career path, like that does not exist as a proportion of the population. Like it's just not as easy to find those career paths where you just lock in for 40 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it. Like I also think just in general too, cheap entertainment is so easy to get, right? And, with social media, I mean, there's like free entertainment, right? And if you look back over why people typically had a desire to earn money, it's typically for a lifestyle. If you don't care about your lifestyle, you don't need to earn a lot of money. You can live on food stamps, you can do whatever. And so like, even when a lot of us that are on like the millennial generation, and Drew, I think you're technically still millennial, right?
I am the oldest millennial. Yes.
You're in 1980. Yeah,
He's
so
the elder.
Right, but like your whole thing, we're getting money was so that you could have more freedom to do stuff that you wanted to do. You could have like a nicer house, you could travel, you could do more hobbies. You could get like your I was gonna say butt wings. I know it's not what you call the butt fan. Paramotor. Yeah. So, but like that shit like costs money, right? Like you to be able to do that, you have to have a job where you can afford it. But now if, people don't have that inclination because they're so easily entertained with like free social media and everything else, like they don't have the drive to make that money, Dan. Like when I was in college and somebody offered me $50 to go and like cut grass or something, like I remember going home for the summer and I would just be doing odd like landscaping jobs and stuff. It's because I wanted like beer money when I went back to school. Like honestly, that was the driver for it, was to be able to just go out and do stuff where they don't have that anymore. I actually read this Reddit post. I thought it was kind of interesting. It was like an Ask Reddit, and it said, people that are like 25 and still live in your mom's basement, what's wrong with you? Why are you like that? And the most upvoted comment I actually thought was very insightful. And he was like, I'm literally this person. He's like, I'm 24 years old. I do not have a job. I did not go to college. I still live in my mom's basement. I spend most of my days reading and playing video games. And he basically said that he came from a family where his parents weren't bad. They were present, but they weren't necessarily persistent, and they didn't like encourage him to do anything. So they never put him into hobbies, never put him into sports. He never really had interest. Basically, he would go to school, he would come home, he would maybe do his homework, he'd play video games. And then when he graduated, there was never any turning point where things transitioned into quote unquote adulthood. He didn't go to college, didn't like move out, didn't do anything. And his parents just kind of just let him do that. And so he was basically just in the cycle of time with there never actually being like a distinct point of like, you are an adult now. And so what happens is he gets into his 20s and he's now a juvenile and he has no life experiences or skills or drive to do anything because he's never had to adopt it. And I think that's probably super common, because if you look
is that a parental thing that you would suggest, or a culture thing, or a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both, right? It's a societal issue and a parental issue. Because there's always been parents that are like that. The difference is when we were younger, we got fucking bored and we went and like did stuff.
Yeah.
Because like, God, I can't sit in here and play Goldeneye again. Like you've already done that.
When I turned 16, I got my license the day I turned 16. Now there's kids that like don't get them like till they're like 20 years old. Like, dude, why do I need to drive? I'm like, I don't understand. We'll never understand.
So when I grew up in Montana, it was like right when I was in that 15, 16 age, I could actually get my driver's license at 14 if I took driver's ed. And so I like busted my ass to do it. So I got my driver's license my freshman year of high school. And I did that explicitly so that I did not have to stay at my house. So I could like just go and do anything. And I used to drive around in my mom's like old minivan, and I would have like 8 kids in there, and we would just run around and do like hoodlum shit because we had nothing else to fucking do. That was what we did.
Everything in Montana, so you got to have a car.
Yeah, and it wasn't like we didn't have games. I was still a geek. Like there was one. I remember this particular Sunday. It was a beautiful, beautiful day outside, and I was like 16. I went to my friend's house and we built a computer. Like fucking nerds. And so we did that so that we could play World of Warcraft together, right? But even then, that you eventually got bored of doing that, and you would just go do something else. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think big picture, the major concern with that is from like a real estate and business standpoint is like the consumer base for everything is going to get smaller. You know, and if we have all these assets, you're trying to start these businesses, if no one's going to pay you for them, they're eventually not going to be worth anything, you know? And what's like where you're starting to see now, this would actually be a really interesting statistic. I'm curious what it would look like is if you were to look at the increase in like shareholder value in stocks, how much of that is going to be coming down to like, I mean, obviously money going into it, but how much future revenue is going to be driven by cost savings by like having AI and overseas talent and stuff come in and basically axe their salary overhead versus actual more revenue, you know, so the revenue stay the same, but their profit will increase just because they're reducing their overhead such an excessive amount. I mean, I imagine if it isn't significant already, it will be very, very soon.
Well, a lot of the like AI that we interface with on a daily basis, like the large language models, ChatGPTs, Groks, like that kind of stuff. A lot of them are money losers right now. Like the data centers are very expensive to run. The raw materials to build those data centers are very expensive.
As the companies, but you think about like, let's say that there's a $50 million company that now has their entire marketing department that they brought down to 2 people. They used to be 20, right? Because they are able to use ChatGPT to do a lot of the different stuff now. And so their overhead went from being $100,000 a month in that department to 10.
Yeah.
Yes, that part I agree with. But they're outsourcing
problem.
that AI, not building the AI.
Yeah.
I don't
think it's a problem. I don't think that's just like saying, hey, when we came out with software programs, it's going to eliminate jobs, and it did, and then it created a whole pile more jobs. Like automation.
Every technological innovation has created more jobs than it's displaced. Now who knows if that'll happen with AI or not, because there's a lot of smart people saying that this will be the first time that's not the case, but only time will tell.
Well,
yeah, only time will tell. I do say I am always bullish on the human race to figure shit out.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. To tie it back to the discussion we were having earlier, though, about families redlining and foreclosures ticking up and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, that's my biggest concern is that they're going to run out of credit because everybody wants credit. Everyone wants to keep spending. We're going to find ways to keep spending for better or for worse. Yeah. But if we do see this labor shift in the AI world, which I am all for, I think it will lead to new forms of employment and new levels of productivity. But I think people's jobs changed, and no other generation has been more poorly suited to be able to adapt because they weren't redlining like we all seem to be right now. And so that's really my concern is I don't know that I see the housing market falling out or crashing or like disappearing by any means, but it could be enough of a quick exodus from the labor force that no one has 4 weeks to be able to fund themselves anymore.
Totally. Yeah, and it seems like that. Like there's always localized issues, and there's always like an industry that dies. I think we're seeing the software developer industry die, and I think that was probably led. I believe it was led when Elon started laying guys off, and then every other tech company started laying guys off because they were just like, we don't need all you people, regardless, because they overhired during COVID, right? And then they figured out like, oh, you can run this company with a third of the staff. Okay, let's do it. But that was like the first round of like we're just bloated. Now it's like, okay, the next round is like you guys are just using, ChatGPT or whatever they use to do to do programming. They're like, okay, now we really don't need you guys. We only need a handful of you guys. So I do think like there's industries that will completely flip upside down and change. Good thing for those guys is they're also nerds, so they can go be AI nerds and probably do something on the back end of AI.
We know that's not what they're gonna do though. Like we've met so many of these guys through GoBundance and different things where they're like 25 and they're just making $500,000 a year at Netflix and they just got laid off, and now their personal their personal worth is $500,000 a year, which is not achievable anywhere else except for in that incredibly small bubble that they'd managed to squeeze themselves into.
Or when it's real manic and they had 3 or 4 jobs at a time, making that kind of salary.
That was a great. I mean, good for those guys. They did it.
But with like the job loss stuff, I think they should like, and if you're a local market and there's one employer and that one employer is a tech company, which is, I guess that's probably a very small subdivision of cities, but like that would be the time where I'd be scared if I was in that market, because if they lay off half their staff, boom, there goes the whole town, right? Like there goes like 30% of the jobs in that one location.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people, I think the Midwest probably saw some of this benefit. You guys like in Cincinnati, Fort Wayne is,
I think so.
And I know Mike and I have talked to several folks like legit, like were in an industry on a coastal market, and they moved to the Midwest after COVID because they could work remotely. And I think like there's like that that dispersion of jobs. And I think for some of those people that maybe like you're saying, Dylan, maybe it's San Francisco, maybe it's Austin, they eventually say, wow, this is really freaking expensive and I no longer have a job. I'm going to go back to or go to a Midwest town where I can buy a single family home and still live the American dream.
And be more affordable. But the opposite is also true. I mean, years ago when they, the early 2000s when China got in the WTO and they outsourced all manufacturing production overseas, that's when a lot of these towns that where Drew and I live got hollowed out, for lack of a better term. So a lot of those jobs left around those times.
Yeah. And Dylan, I don't know if you're seeing it where you're at, but there really is a very notable influx into the Midwest right now. Yes. And I wouldn't say it's like in droves where you see like Austin exploding. But you're seeing growth in cities that have just kind of been stagnant for a while. And I think a lot of that really is an affordability issue, or we're seeing a lot of, it used to be that people would move away to go to college and then they'd stay there and then they move their family back because it's very wholesome and church and like their parents live here. And so we would see that, but now people are staying like through the whole course of it much more than they were before. And then the other thing though is like a lot of people will live here, but then there'll be snowbirds in Florida or some in the winter and things like that. And given the taxes down there, given the insurance and hurricanes and stuff, like we're just seeing more and more people coming back to the Midwest. Like some of the biggest growth cities right now are places like Fort Wayne, Grand Rapids. I don't know how Cincinnati's doing, but I mean,
pretty good
places that you wouldn't really have previously highlighted. Again, not that you try to chase a market that's rapidly growing, but I would consider investing in some of these markets in a way that I hadn't considered before.
Well, and a lot of it is like you're an industrial, Drew, so you probably talk to this. One of the growing sectors of the economy is still logistics. And then so like they need these industrial and warehouse spaces for all of the, I don't know, transportation, for lack of a better term, that goes on with that, the Amazon data centers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And whether it's, everything's kind of hub and spoke, right? Where stuff gets flown in or shipped in from somewhere else, but then it kind of fingers out into all these other little markets. And whether you're the distributor who's sending stuff out or you're a small little shop on the receiving end, like we talked about before, people aren't stopping to, they're not slowing down their spending, right? So we're seeing a lot of demand for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny. If you go to most states, that probably exists in some capacity as well. So I actually just looked it up, Dan. The two fastest growing cities in Washington State are Spokane and Tri-Cities, which is really funny to me. So
that is kind of funny that we still would have I mean, I don't know what that means in relation to the I-5 corridor, but
Yeah. But I mean, it's people moving away from like the big tech area to somewhere that has a similar environment, but like a higher, just like more bang for your buck. I don't want to say higher quality of life because that's how you get into a fist fight with people, but you get more bang for your buck in terms of housing, in terms of like living expenses, everything else.
How far are you guys from like Seattle for us who aren't on the West Coast?
300 miles.
Yeah, okay. It's like a 4.5 hour drive or like a 30-minute flight. It's far enough that when people like talk about Washington, they forget about us entirely.
Sure.
Yeah. Like Seattle.
Yeah. So, well, Drew, what are you thinking on like the commercial side, just to wrap this up and bring this full circle with your stuff? Is like any of like kind of the macroeconomic stuff or these patterns affecting you on the commercial side, since all of your tenants are almost exclusively businesses?
Yeah.
Right. Like, do you have any concerns around those sort of things, or
can I ask an adjacent question?
Yeah.
To that, like, are you still underwriting your commercial stuff via like a cap rate calculation?
Ooh, that's a good
and
question.
Is that dependent on the market that you're analyzing in?
Yeah. So really good question. I could answer it a number of ways. We use cap rates quite a bit. So our model is sometimes we use our own money, but then we'll go get bank debt. But a lot of times we're bringing in investors now, and we'll probably start looking towards a fund model. And like with the momentum that we've got, the deals that we're closing, we'll probably have to start going that way. But we know that certain properties won't cash flow, and I can't provide enough return to certain investors unless we get it at a pretty significantly high cap rate. So, our portfolio right now is humming at about a 13 to 14 cap, which is really good. We're acquiring, probably 9.5 to 11.5 cap rates that are in place day one. So, like our investments, that we invest for cash flow. as opposed to having to completely redo a project. Now we're open to taking those, and we've done some of those, but when we bring investors on, we want it to cash flow day one, as opposed to a lot of the syndications and things where they bought the apartment, they had to right size it in the next 2 or 3 years, and they had to do the thing, whatever the thing was, and then people start getting paid. So we're pretty rigorous with our underwriting, but I think I have a lot of people asking me like, hey, if I wanted to shift to commercial, should I do that? And if I may, I would just speak to some of the warnings that come with commercial, because yes, it's true that if you could buy 10 houses, I would rather buy one warehouse, right? And they all cost the same, right? Less headaches, economies of scale, all that kind of stuff. But people need to know that sometimes when these commercial properties go empty, they are big empty for months. And those debt payments, you might have a $9,000 mortgage payment every single month. I mean, it could wreck some people. And so I see some people chasing after it, and I encourage it, and I wish them the best, and I'll be here to help them if they have any questions and things like that. But you really, really need to sharpen your sword before you start swinging at commercial.
Yeah. And that kind of, like those are the assets where people got the most roasted over the last few years as well. So they were trying to force that appreciation, like you were saying, instead of buying at decent cap rates on day one. Right. And I mean, the biggest names out there are getting completely cooked right now on a lot of deals that they bought in 22 and 23.
Yep.
But awesome, guys. So anything to wrap up here before we head out?
I'm good.
Right on. Drew, well, really quick before we go, where can people find you, follow you, reach out to you?
Yeah, easiest way is probably just on Instagram, at The Flying Investor. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, too much time on Facebook, but either one of those would be just fine.
Yeah, if you go and find a post, like any kind of political post, far right or far left, you will find Drew in the comment section just stirring the pot, just because that's what he likes to do.
Not because I have a strong opinion. Like I'm a wild moderate, but you give me a stick and I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I feel you, Drew. I love it.
That's one of the reasons we get on so well. So awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.
See y'all.